Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
During that evacuation, the stakes were so high, and I was painfully aware of that. Like, if we didn't get these girls out onto a plane and literally, get them in the air heading out of their country, then their future would be extremely different from the one that they wanted. And there was going to be one shot and no take backs. And the world was going to be very sympathetic for a very short period of time. And then it was going to slow down to what it is now. And I'm not very often right about things, but I was right about that.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
I need you, brother. Please, Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. Courage. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you.
Say the word, Chef.
Let it rip.
Eight kids, 4 teams, 1 shot at a junior world championship. The USARA youth national teams are heading to Canada to represent the United States at the Junior Adventure Racing World Championships. And they need our help, the community's help getting there. These are young athletes doing what we did when we started, balancing school and training, learning to navigate, learning to suffer a little, learning what a real team actually means. And now they get to do it on an international stage against the best junior racers in the world. That's right, folks. We are sending our best to Canada, and we need your help because the costs are real. Registration, food, travel, accommodations. For young athletes and their families, those costs add up fast. The adventure racing community helped to build these racers. We built these kids, and we want to help them get to the start line. The link to support them is in the show notes. Whatever you could do makes a difference. Help to send our racers to Canada, and best of luck to everybody. The Adventure Racing Kids Summer Camp runs out of the Macedon Resort in Virginia this coming summer, 2026. Ages 9 to 16 years old, 1 week. Mountain biking, hiking, whitewater rafting on the Shenandoah, team challenges, campfires, and actual adventure racing concepts baked into each and every day. This is not a babysitting week with a ropes course. Nope. Grit Adventures. We know Grit. They do a great job. They run this program with intention, building resilience, teaching kids how to suffer a little bit and come out on the other side, and giving them teammates they'll remember. Hand a child a compass, let them figure it out, watch what happens. That's the whole idea for a whole week. Water park access, all meals included, tent camping on the property. The link is in the show notes. And if your child is ready, the Adventure Racing Kids Summer Camp would love to have them. Dark Zone listeners could use code DARKZONE when they register for a $100 discount. That's right, folks, all lowercase. Dark Zone at registration for a $100 discount. Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. Longtime listeners of the show will recognize the voice of the person from an early episode, but will also recognize their organization from ads that we've run on the Dark Zone over the years. We are a proud sponsor of Ascend Athletics. They do fantastic work in Afghanistan and Pakistan with young girls and women. And we love having them on here as our charity sponsor. I always like to say they pay nothing for our support. And we love the fact that Ascend is part of the Dark Zone. And we love the fact that Marina LeGree, who is the executive director of Ascend Athletics, joined us today. But she is not here just to talk about Ascend, even though she will. She also took part last year in the Maine Summer Adventure Race with her family. So we have a little Ascend connection with adventure racing. We're delighted to have her here. Marina, welcome back to the Dark Zone. How's it going over there?
Good. Thanks for having me back.
So here we are now. It's early May of 2026. So we want to dive obviously into all that you're doing over there with Ascend Athletics. But I want to run the clock back a little bit. And last year, you took part in the Maine Summer Adventure Race with you and your family. Your adventure race introduction came through the Dark Zone. You didn't know who we were. We talked about it, and you got pulled into that orbit. Talk to us a bit about your adventure racing experience in the Maine Summer Adventure.
Yeah, so I had hardly heard of adventure racing as a sport when right around the same time, I got in touch with you and was on the podcast for the first time and was really intrigued by what it was, and then learned that one of our board members at Ascend, who's a friend, is an adventure racer. And I went and did my first one with him and one of our Afghan alumni who we'd evacuated from Afghanistan. down in Virginia. Had a great time. So just kind of fell in love with the whole thing. And so last summer I decided that my kids are big enough to do it. And there was one within range where I live in Maine. So we went and did it, and we're doing it again this summer. Yeah, my boys are 9 and 10 now, so they're perfect for it. And I had a great time.
You know, as a parent, you make decisions regarding where your kids put their time and attention. And clearly, the audience for the Dark Zone, they get adventure racing. They get what we're doing, why we're doing it here. Can you talk a bit about what you want your kids to take out of the experience for all the sports they do, baseball, whatever it might be, but you choose adventure racing? What do you want to pull out of that experience?
Yeah. Well, one of the key things is just being in the natural environment, being immersed in the woods, basically. That's really important. That's in my DNA. I grew up in the woods in Washington State, and my boys have moved around a lot. And I want them to have that deep connection to being able to literally find your way around and pay attention and know what things are and what to look for outdoors to orient yourself. So the orienteering part of it is maybe number one, because I want them to be competent human beings that can figure their way out of problems and not be in always man-made spaces when they're doing that. So I love that aspect of it. They liked it too. We had, compasses, and they took a crack at trying to figure out which way was which and follow the map and everything. But also that feeling of satisfaction when you do something that's hard. Like my younger son, he was 8 at the time, and it was a 3-hour race. So it's not like grueling or anything, but he was tired and he pushed through, and that experience, it's different from going out and playing baseball with your friends for a couple of hours. So it's I think, grit. It's appreciation for nature and the wildness of the world we live in, and but also having the confidence to go out into it and know you can navigate around. That's
you're so spot on there, right? There's so much research that shows that everybody, not just children, everybody benefits from the cognitive benefit of holding a 2-dimensional map and against a 3-dimensional landscape. There's that. There's the travel over time. There's being out in the woods. One of the nice things of adventure racing is that we're technology free, right? Your watch goes on adventure race mode, and you're not relying upon any sort of outside assistance to make your own path. So there's so many centers of growth and improvement that we pick out in adventure racing. Obviously, when you do it with children, you realize that you're playing into the development and their growth, right? And so you clearly recognize the fact as a parent that all of those centers, all of those areas are touched by the adventure racing that you do. As they grow and as they lean into the sports component of their lives, obviously team is a huge part, right? I mean, I'm just seeing, I don't know if it's my algorithm, I don't know if it's the world I'm living in. I'm seeing so many articles and so much research about community and team and working together, and that is the superpower of humans. The fact that we could work together in society and do all of that. And so talk to me a bit about the team aspect that kind of you pulled out of Maine Summer Adventure Race, and I want to lead the witness a bit. I want you to marry that into your work with Ascend Athletics.
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially when we see the crazy events that unfold globally that sometimes feel like, they just drive us all apart. And that is the human superpower. We don't have to live that way. We can do things together as a team, unite. And I think that's why adventure racing is just a microcosm of, let's tackle a hard problem as a team. And actually, of course, with my own sons, it's just, they're my kids and we're always a team. But with Sean and Robbie, my teammates who I did my first adventure race with, it was really fun because we're so different. Like Sean's, he wins races all the time. He's like an incredible human specimen. And then Robbie and I had done it for the first time. Robbie had barely ridden a bike, never paddled a canoe. And watching how we balanced each other out as a team and truly had a great time. And like everybody dug deep. And I think for Sean, you dig deep when you're the strongest one and you're coaching and supporting your teammates and holding back when you should and encouraging them. So watching him do that was pretty masterful. And then for Robbie and I, it was other things, that we had to dig deep and find our best performance. But yeah, it was just an incredible compact experience of teamwork in a day. And that was like, I'm trying to remember, that was before I even moved to Maine. So it's ages ago, but I have crystal clear memories of that day and bonds with those two people that last and feed our relationship to this day as well. So yeah, I love that. The depth of bonding and mutual respect and appreciation you can have in a good team. Now I'll transition to Ascend. That's what we're trying to do with Ascend is take women and girls who often totally lack the opportunity to have that type of experience and put them in the natural environment, which for us is usually, it's trekking and camping in the mountains in Afghanistan. It was up until 2021. We were always taking girls out on camping, trekking, climbing trips, away from their families, away from social pressures, away from the norms of what girls should and shouldn't do, and put them in a team. And what we see all the time with situations where women's rights are reduced or restricted is women don't have the opportunity to work together as a team. And instead they're pitted against one another to, competing for social dominance and social roles in marriage and whatever. So yeah, they don't get to have fun on a team and do sports. And we're trying to provide those opportunities. And you see it like, again, those girls too, like the ones that were in our Afghan program from 2015 to 2021, who were able to have those outdoor experiences, they still feed off of those experiences today too. And it's been a long time. But yeah, it just shows how powerful those experiences can be and shaping on your, the rest of your life and kind of how you see people.
And so there's that, the microcosm aspect of adventure racing, the larger aspect of working in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, the idea of building a team and putting that together. And there's the Venn circle, the diagram kind of cover each other very nicely in those two regards. You mentioned 2015, right? And so now that's 11 years ago. So Ascend is a legacy-based organization. For those of us who are listening who don't understand the role and the goals of Ascend, talk to us about your work in Pakistan, your work in Afghanistan, and how you're attempting to break those models, those paradigms, and support young women and girls.
Sure. So I started Ascend in 2015 in Afghanistan, which I'd been living there before that. In 2005 to 2009, I lived in rural Afghanistan. So saw the gap for sports for girls. There was just nothing for them. And launched Ascend as a way to provide opportunities for girls to develop confidence, teamwork, leadership, resilience, all those great things. But specifically to do it in the outdoor sports setting. Because of that need to get away from social pressures and observation from other people and all of that. And also to connect with nature and all the healing powers that has. My vision at the time was to prove the concept in Afghanistan and then take it elsewhere. Because if you look around, girls everywhere lack opportunities for that. And I wouldn't say much in Maine. Maine is kind of the birthplace of a lot of the programs that I tried to emulate with Ascend, like Outward Bound and Girls on the Run has a lot of great things. There's now like the sport for development field has flourished since I started Ascend 11 years ago. And now there's lots of great organizations doing similar kind of things, which is fun because we can partner and use our expertise in rock climbing and mountain sports. But yeah, so we did that in Afghanistan successfully from 2015 to 2021. We did mountaineering, we did rock climbing and ice climbing and lots of trekking and camping. We had one of our team members summit Mount Noshak, the only Afghan woman ever to do it. And then the Taliban decided to come and ruin our day. So we had to take everything indoors. And so we operate now in Kabul, a program, and a little bit in another province as well, up in Badakhshan. But we try to get at the sport element through yoga and physical fitness and things that we can do indoors in our private space. But we can't do the outdoor thing. But we do entrepreneurship training, lots of leadership and life skills and other work in the classroom environment. In Pakistan, we launched in 2023, not knowing if the Afghan program was going to be viable long-term, given the governance situation there. We launched in Pakistan in the northern part where the mountains are absolutely incredible and there's outdoor adventure opportunities all over the place, but not a mature pipeline for women and girls, definitely. And there's a real gap there where there's lots of Pakistanis who are eager to take part in outdoor adventure, but it's still a conservative culture, specifically in the north as well. And there's lots of barriers to girls participating, even basic ones like we have here, like equipment and know-how and people to go with. So we stepped into that space, and the first thing we did was train local women to be technically competent. So we partnered with the American Mountain Guides Association, and one of their providers came to Pakistan to do the single pitch instructor course and assessment and certify our people so we know they're safe and know what they're doing. But now we're starting the phase where we're doing a whole bunch of camps and activities for girls, sometimes boys too, sometimes women and men as well. But getting people outdoors and getting them in those kind of spaces where we can provide. And it's always coupled with mental health and wellness and kind of and climate resiliency as well. Kind of a bigger picture package, but it's just launching. We're in Islamabad this weekend, actually doing a couple of activities.
You've certainly picked an exciting part of the world to do your work.
It's never dull. But also, I have to add on, like, this can be done anywhere. And again, it's in the 11 years since I started Ascend, I'm really thinking about where to go next. It's just a bandwidth issue, but it could be in the United States. It could be in lots of places in the world. There's barriers to women and girls participating in sport, all over the place. And so we're really trying to work on being a connector and an enabler and getting the Ascend model into new places.
Yeah, there's a few things that there's echoes of your experience that we see in the communities that we celebrate in Adventure Race. Like, for example, you mentioned Girls on the Run. You mentioned the other organizations that are centered around young women and helping with their growth, right? In a society that very often is designed to diminish them, you want to help them grow. We have a very, very strong family connection to the girls' leadership, which is Simone Marion and Rachel Simmons started that years ago, right? And so there's this constellation, this orbit of organizations that work successfully with young women, young girls. And then it's almost as if, like in the world of adventure racing, you have all these race organizers that operate independent of each other, but they rely upon each other for advice and for guidance, for thoughts. And I always call it kind of a soft competition, right? They're not really head to head, but there's a universe, there's a constellation of organizations, and we serve all these different needs along the way. And so clearly Ascent has aligned themselves with those organizations. And it's great to see in that, the 30 plus years that I've been working in education, playing my role in helping to raise my daughter, being involved in many organizations. I work in education, which is primarily a female-dominated field on the teacher side. It's been really gratifying and wonderful to see the growth of how the women today that are leading educational organizations were the girls that went to those groups 20 years ago, right? And it's that thread has followed through their lives. And so there's that component that I see that connection there. And I want you to talk a bit more about the transferable nature of what you're doing at Ascend to other organizations, because clearly Afghan and Pakistan are very, very, very challenging environments to work in, governance structures, cultural barriers, all of that. But you mentioned America, you mentioned the United States. And so talk a bit about, as you look at Ascend and the work that you do, and not that there's plans locked into place, but as you imagine the growth of the organization, how do you see it evolving over time?
Yeah. Well, I see it very clearly that there is, like you say, a constellation of organizations and people who are powered by the same core purpose. And again, it's almost helpful in a way that the global events are so negative in some ways right now, and women's rights are being challenged in a lot of places. It's a unifying thing. I think it reminds us that nobody has the lock on, people living well, living freely. So it's a universal struggle that we all have, and we really want to be bringing Ascend home to where we started and who sustains our work through donations and support and all of that, because it's generally people who get it. They've experienced it in some way in their own life. Like you said, you've raised a daughter maybe, or you're in adventure racing, or you're a climber, or you're somebody who was involved in Title IX advocacy. There's so many reasons that people, that Ascend resonates with people. And very few of those people are going to go to Afghanistan or Pakistan. So bringing Ascend home in a way that we can connect people directly to the cause is really the goal. And we're going to do that through a series of climbing and hiking events that allow people to get to know us as an organization. And we're still kind of figuring out how exactly to do that, because it is challenging. It's a long ways away, but we've got also team members all over the place, including the Afghan alumni who were settled in the U.S. and some other countries after 2021 that will be a part of that moving forward. They lived it. They lived the Ascend program and then saw kind of what those experiences did for them that sustained them through hard times in their life. So we want to kind of channel those voices as well.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, right? You talk a bit about the current cultural climate, the way things are today, and the apparent regression when it comes to race in many countries, including America, right? There's this repeal of cultural attitudes and laws that supported the growth of women over time, right? And that appears to be under siege. But the thing is, you can't unring that bell. And once society has gone forward, while there very well may be regression, history has shown that there's progression. Getting to that's the hard part. Mm-hmm. And clearly you're looking to bring that ethic back into the country, bring it back through the work of Ascend. You talk about in the future the way that you want to go with the American side of things, but there already is an American side of things. Tell us about Hike for Her.
Yes. So Hike for Her is the number one way that we do that we can bring the organization to people who want to participate in it. And it's a global day of solidarity and support for women who can't necessarily get out and hike. We all come out and we hike wherever we live. In some places, it might be like an urban walk. It doesn't really matter. The point is to get out and rally around enabling women and girls to have these opportunities. So it's happening on May 30th. We have, I think, 12 or 15 locations now across the U.S. in a few different countries. We've got one in England and Ireland. So yeah. Grab a team. We're aiming for like 8 to 10 people per team, and we'll mail you a box of T-shirts so you can have a cool T-shirt. And it's a fundraiser, obviously, so the registration fee goes directly to the programs that we're running, and we are encouraging people to fundraise in addition to that as well. And those, it's our primary community-based fundraiser here for Ascend.
I think it's interesting dynamic to put together, right? There's this talk of diaspora, right? That people are spread around, that because of a shock somewhere. And you mentioned the Afghan alumni, and I really want you to spend a little bit of time talking about their experience here and talking about what it's been like in their growth in America, right? And how they've come across here. Because we have talked in the past about how Ascend was not a refugee resettlement organization. Ascend is designed to work with women and girls, but you had alumni that came out of Kabul in 2021. And so I understand correctly, by moving Hike for Her to a global event as opposed to a single event, which was in Virginia, I'd done that 2 years ago. By making it global, you want more people around the world to be able to lean into what Hike for Her stands for and then support Ascend along the way.
That's right. And we want to make it accessible and inclusive so that wherever people are, whatever their connection is to the organization, they can get out and express that. It's not it's meant to fit wherever people are. So we've got Afghan alumni in Vancouver, Washington, in a bunch in the Triangle in North Carolina, which has an event, by the way. We want to include them and let them interact with the people who support Ascend. And also, they're the ones who have family and friends and daily interactions with Afghanistan, and they know down to their bones why this cause matters so much right now, today. And the $50 that somebody pays for registration, our Afghan alumni can tell you exactly what that's going to do to transform somebody's experience in Kabul. And so, we want to kind of get out of the way and let them step forward. I had a great conversation with one of our alumni who's living in Ireland. She's leading the event there in Dublin. And they're living in a different time now. There was an awful lot that they had to go through in 2021. And they've all kind of gotten their feet under them and are figuring out a life in a completely different place that they never planned on. It's been almost 5 years now, and they're almost everybody that I've talked to, they're painfully aware of what's going on in Afghanistan and want to help. So this is a way we can also position them. They're helping tremendously.
It's interesting you bring that up, right? You mentioned, 11 years now going on. How long Ascend's been around? 11 years you've been in your role. The 5 years since the fall of Kabul, the 5 years since the women and girls that were able to make it out of Kabul have been spread throughout the world. It feels to me, as we talk a bit about it, that as you take the longer view of the work of Ascend, that you, and I'm going to say you, but I mean the organization, is focused on, how can I say it best? It's focused on having the alumni, the people who benefited from Ascend, take a leadership role in Ascend. That there's like this transfer underway. Am I kind of capturing it correctly?
That's a great way to put it.
And so why the transfer? Why do you think Ascend feels the need to elevate the alumni, to elevate the veterans of the program who benefited from it to leadership roles? What are you trying to tell? Like when you look down the road and you look at the next year, 3 years, 5 years of Ascend, what does the organization imagine the role of those alumni will play in the overall growth of the organization?
Yeah. It is time, and it's a leadership program. And the women that are part of our program, again, the Afghan situation is so specific because the timing is strange. Like we never planned on having people uprooted from their lives and resettled in all these different places. That just kind of made some of them that much tougher, more articulate, more fired up about the cause. And we want to channel that. They are the best advocates for the rights of people in their own country. And they're also extremely powerful voices for the story of women's rights. And I think it's really, Americans have seen Afghanistan through a lens of, it's kind of exotic. It's so far away. It's so extreme how women are treated. But having a human being who's been through all that sit right next to you, or do an adventure race with you. It's just that humans are humans. And that type of regression of rights can happen anywhere. And I think their voices are really crucial in reminding us that this is it is a universal struggle that we have to deal with. So me being the advocate, Afghanistan it's a country that I'm always going to be deeply connected to. I lived there for 5 years. I have been involved for over 20 now. But it isn't my country. And it's incumbent on people from their place to advocate for their place and their people. So I really want to position our graduates to do that. And they'll be better than I am at it.
Yeah,
sure.
It's funny how the idea of connecting people, no one defends and cares for their home like people who are from there.
That's right.
That's why throughout history, forces that have attempted to invade other countries have failed, because people who are defending their home will fight far more vociferously than someone who shows up from the outside. Right? This is history 101. This will be on the final. And so clearly, you woke up in me an idea that I remember learning about in college. I went to a Catholic college in the Bronx, and very, very active social justice ministry program, very active working with others. And they would talk a lot about the idea of, and this was the evolution of this thought, and I'm going to paraphrase it, maybe I'll even get it right, that very often the person who was being helped would say to the helper, if you are here to save me, you are useless to me. But if we are here to save each other, that's when we could work together. And yes. You woke that up in me as you talked about your work in Ascend. It's not about you parachuting into Afghanistan or Pakistan to save these people, but more it's about you playing your role in facilitating their growth. And that sounds like that's an evolution of your own personal approach. It's always been that way probably for a long time, but also how you want to frame Ascend to the world. You are not there to rescue anybody. You're there to help them rescue themselves. Am I capturing that correctly?
Yes. And if I can capture this correctly, yes, absolutely. It is about community, ultimately. When I have a really strange kind of role to play because, being a small town girl from Washington State, I don't look on the surface like I belong in Afghanistan. But when I went to Afghanistan and I rooted there, and I spent 5 years there in my 20s and my early 30s, when most of my peers were kind of building their lives in cities or whatever, doing other things, other places. I was living in rural Afghanistan in a mud brick house, and Afghan people, and also it had to do with, my own family. My parents divorced and moved away from the small town I'd grown up in. So there was no home base to go back to at that kind of life transition. And I had also called off a wedding. So kind of blew up some of my own personal relationships. So I was I was just kind of rattling around in the world.
Right.
And going to that very far place, Afghan people became my community. And of course, the cultural gap is huge, but you pretty quickly learn that doesn't matter that much. And anybody that's had those types of experiences, I think, can relate. You get welcomed in, and people just look after you, and you connect. And that's what happened to me. So yes, Afghans helped me and became my community at that time in my life. And that's part of what drives me is anybody who wants to give back to the community that's welcomed them should get involved with this end. Like if you've had climbing or sport or leadership or something feed you and look after you, give that gift to somebody who doesn't have it. That's what drives me. It's totally not about rescuing Afghans or, it could happen. It could be anywhere. It could be in Alabama or something too. It doesn't matter what the location is. It's really that feeling of like when you're part of a community and that community looks after you, at some point you have a chance to do something in return and you do it. And we have this rich tradition in the US of sports, and especially like, again, the Outward Bound and Girls on the Run kind of combo was what was at the top of my mind. Like what a great path for anybody to have those experiences. And in a lot of countries in the world, there's no such thing. There's no such tradition of like using the outdoors as a learning space, not by mainstream, people. So that's really what I kind of zeroed in on. And like, it's such a huge opportunity for young people. And that's why actually we hired a Norwegian in Afghanistan to be our country director, because Norway has a fabulous outdoor education program. It's very much integrated in their public school system. So she brought that element as well. And yeah, so on we go.
It's funny you mentioned your 20s and 30s, and I think there's definitely a bit of a developmental thing there for so many of us, that those experiences in your 20s and 30s become core parts of your identity going forward, right? Yeah. The first place I worked was an inner city Catholic high school for 6 years, right? From 21 to 28 years old. And that was just who I was. Like that resonates, echoes through my life all the way today. You also made me laugh a little bit too, because Sebastian Younger, I heard him speak the other night, and he told the story about how he ended up being a war reporter in Bosnia. And he said he took an informal poll of all the war reporters, and every one of them were people who had breakups in their lives. And so rather than go to Bosnia, you ended up in Afghanistan, right? That was a common, that got a big laugh out of the crowd when he shared that was the commonality for all the war reporters, that they had to go someplace dangerous to recover themselves. And so that you and Sebastian Younger share that. Oh, by the way, if I understand correctly, you intersected with him when he was making Restrepo. You had told me about that previously. You met Younger before.
Yeah, there were multiple times when he was doing his thing and I was kind of lurking around. I mean, yeah, I think I told you, I had always envisioned him as like an old man. And then he showed up because I had read his work. I'd never seen him. And I saw him. I was working in Kunar province in 2007, 2008. And he was there with Tim Hetherington. Yeah. And I was very surprised to figure out who he was and a bit, starstruck, because I think he's amazing. But yeah, he was a cool customer. They were great. They were professionals.
He did a thing the other night. He was up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which was the setting for the perfect storm. And he was asked to return there to speak at a fundraising benefit for the Lily Jean, which is a fishing vessel that was just lost this past January. He gave this wonderful talk that was hopeful and inspirational, and it was part eulogy and it was part growth. And it was just a very, very powerful evening. And you could see how, and I think you have shadows of this too, there's something to be said for it. And let's all bring back to adventure racing now, right? Adventure racing is a sport. Let's put it in its proper context. But this all sort of echoes with each other, that there is a type of growth that only comes out of trial and challenge and hard places. And that's the only place you could find that growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of those. I mean, adventure racing is something I hope I can do a lot more, because it just scratches so many itches for me, and it's really fun. And especially as my boys get bigger, we can maybe graduate from the 3-hour races next year. But yeah, I had a lot of those experiences in the course of my daily work. I was a civilian working in the combat zone. It was kind of crazy. And you had to be physically tough enough to just, roll with whatever was going on. And the Afghan environment is, it's pretty harsh. And as a development worker as well, which is what I was, you don't have a cushion around you providing you much of anything. You're sent out alone to do the job. You don't complain. You have your 20 kilos ready to run away if there's a security problem at any moment. And you deal with life without electricity and without creature comforts and all that stuff. So yeah, and I loved it. I thrived. I was totally fine in that environment. It's not for everyone, but it was for me. In the combat area, that was not for me, because it totally devastated that sense of community that was really why I was there. And I'd love to talk to Sebastian Younger about that someday and he's seen a lot, but the place that we were was the tip of the spear. I mean, it was, there was fighting and dying going on constantly. But the bulk of my experience was more just like doing development work, working with communities and people to better their existence in a place that was kind of violent. It was messy, but mainly it was just rugged and beautiful and underdeveloped. Yeah.
And then you took that formal experience in your 20s and 30s and you transferred it over to Ascend, and that work lives today in that. And I think it's pretty cool that you are working with alumni that were the age that you were when you were in Afghanistan.
Yeah, totally. The one I was talking to yesterday, she's 25 now. And dealing with all those challenges that you have when you're 25, where you've got to build and shape your own life. And there's lots of big questions on the horizon. Yeah. But yeah, those are my people. I love women of that age who are trying to figure it out. And I'm really trying to encourage them to think bigger, and be a leader, be somebody who is a force for good in other people's lives. And I see that. I mean, a lot of these women now, having emerged from this really difficult time, are doing that. They're doing big, like Sadaf, who's in Ireland. She's spending the summer going to Africa, actually, on a volunteer trip. They're working with school kids and doing some sports in schools and other things. So, yeah.
What an incredible experience for her, having been an Afghan refugee, lands in Ireland, takes all that Ascend has to offer, and now she is now in turn taking that same ethic to Africa.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, for you, I can only imagine, you and I don't work in the same field, but we work in fields that can be the most delightful and the most frustrating fields ever, right? And we have to manage that growth and that experience, that frustration along the way. And I think what I always do, and this is a little bit of, his name escapes me right now, but it's the idea of, if you want to survive in a field like your field, and a field of which mine kind of echoes too, you can't get frustrated by what appears to be the big issues that you can't solve, but rather the fact that there are individual people whose lives are made better by the work that we're doing. And that's what we tether ourselves to, not to
Absolutely.
Changing massive systems that are very immune to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I'm, as I get older, I am thinking more clearly, I think, of how I want to spend my time. And my academic background is actually in focusing on this big systems change. I have degrees in policy and international affairs and things like that. And that's all great. But what lights me up and what I'm actually doing at Ascend is this human connection work. It's the human beings that are going to drive these systems. And if we don't have women and girls who are growing up in these systems, recognizing they can change things, they can take charge, then we're going to have things on repeat, forever. So I'm very happy to continue working with girls and have them grow up to become, 25 like Sadaf and think that she can change the world, because she can.
Exactly. And she will, right? That's what we hold ourselves on to. And I sometimes wonder what people who are my age now, I'm 55, looked back when I was 25 and saw me banging around and doing all sorts of my thing, what they said about me. And I hope that they extended to me the same grace I tend to extend to 20-somethings today, right? Because it's an easy time. Because to your point, when you're in that age, you're trying to figure out all these big questions. What am I going to be? What am I going to do? When you get to be the age that I am and the age that we kind of, you and I circle around together, it's the idea of like, we've answered a lot of those questions already, so we get to have perspective. But you don't have that when you're in your 20s.
You don't. And that is the age that we work with at Ascend too, because a little younger, because girls are also encouraged to just get married. That's your big thing. The bouquet of options for girls in so many places is totally different. And it's like, yeah, don't think about doing big systems change and like going out and doing adventure racing and, finding your best self. It's like, find your best husband and start having babies. And that notion is alive and well everywhere.
Well, I don't want to go too deep into the culture that I live inside of, but I one time was a witness to a conversation between a grandparent and a granddaughter who said to her, oh, quick, get to college early so you get picked first. And what that person meant was the picking was go find a good husband and become the wife. And then all of a sudden, like that becomes your sole identity. And I remember, and the person it was said to was a relatively progressive teenager, and that was not going to land. And it was an interesting one. But to your point, it exists everywhere. The idea that a woman's value is predicated upon her ability to be a wife, which is so limiting in regards to what she could do with her life.
Yep. And we're disrupting that in a lot of places. That's one of our explicit goals, is to disrupt early marriage and crack open that space a little bit longer so that girls can grow and develop more. And if it's just 2 years that their parents say, yes, they can be in the program and put off marriage a little bit longer, we call that a win. We're not trying to solve everything, but yeah, it's still the case that what you described about college, that's totally right. And a lot of girls in Pakistan, I wish we had some of our Pakistani leaders here to talk about this, but that'll just be a future episode. Yeah, it should be, because they get like a great degree and a great education, but then they don't go to work. Because the whole point of the education was never to use it. It was to be an attractive marriage prospect. I think for the purpose of the conversation, and to avoid anybody who's going to scream about the conversation we're having, is Ascend and me and you, we're not opposed to the institution of marriage. What we push back on is the idea of the lack of choice for young women around that institution. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's an interesting cultural dynamic that you're trying to disrupt one person at a time. It is. And we're actually having a lot of fun. Speaking of community, one of the groups that's supporting our hike for her is Mamas Who Climb. And there's some great role models. And again, they come from various corners of the world, but women who are literally climbing while they're pregnant or they've got a little one, like there's a way to have it to balance what family life and outdoor adventure. And in so many places, the reaction is just, no, you can't. If you're a mom, that's it. Your adventure life is over. And we're trying to also model to the girls in our program that you can have both. So like in Kabul, we've got a nursery in the office, and because we want to explicitly encourage working moms on our staff. And there's always somebody, the average woman in Afghanistan has 6 kids. So there's a lot of babies happening. But they can come to work and keep their job and look after their baby. And in Pakistan, where we're doing outdoor adventure, we have had women in the program too who are moms. And we love that. And anyway, so it's fun to see on the U.S. side, again, finding the same group, moms who climb and who understand why that's such an important community to continue, as you're going through your mothering experience, having climbers and adventurers also to be connected with. One of the coolest things that I've been witness to, that I've been adventure racing now, I'm 15 years adventure racing now. Facebook reminded me of that yesterday, right? So 15 years adventure racing. Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah. Time is a false construct, right? When you get older, like the days just blow by. And one thing I've been a witness to over this decade and a half is the process of adventure racers having children and then raising those children inside the adventure racing space. And then those children then becoming adventure racers. Mm-hmm. And the power there. And very often, the women I know who are moms, who are involved in it, and who are role models and who are involved in it, it's an incredibly powerful community that many people are magnetized to, because a lot of what you're talking about here in regards to goals and choice are personified inside of our community too, right? So there's just, and it's a great thing. I think my big thing is and I don't know where you kind of fall on this, right? But as you get older and you begin to look back, you go from being an active participant in all of these things to the joy of being a witness to others doing it. Mm-hmm. I take so much out of seeing these people grow. And I think that you probably have that same experience as you talk with such love and respect for the women that you've helped along the years. And that's the real power in the work, right? Not what we're doing, it's what we're seeing them do. Absolutely. And yeah, my dream is that Ascend will be taken over at some point. Like I'm executive director still, I'm the founder. But at some point I want to give up the executive director job to somebody else. And I'd love that somebody to be one of the girls that came up through the program. It's a little early now, but it's coming. And that is the point, right? And I want the girls to see the value in what we're trying to do and then make it their own. And with Ascend is a really small organization. We're small but mighty. There's only so much we can do, but I would love to get back to what I said earlier, where the idea was to prove the concept in Afghanistan and then replicate it elsewhere. Right. I'm thinking, we've done some good things in a couple of places. Where else can we go? And I'm working with a guide who's from Ecuador, actually, and she was like, can I take a son to Ecuador? And so we're thinking about what would that look like, a lighter footprint, but bring the same training modules and everything.
Well, the principles are transferable, right?
Totally.
That's what you're saying, right? And the idea that Ascend, while in Ascend's connection to Afghanistan and Pakistan was because of your connection to Afghanistan and Pakistan.
That's right.
And the idea that as you talk about the idea of transition, right? Because eventually all leaders are replaced, right? I had the privilege of leading big organizations. The time came for me to transition out of that role and to give the keys to somebody else who's capable. And I have to tell you, my last superintendent role, the woman who replaced me in that role is so powerful and so strong. And I'm so proud of the work that's being done there following my role there. Is really something to see, right? And so we're kidding ourselves if we think we get to hold on to the reins of power forever. And we have an ethical obligation to give it over to somebody else and the right person for that role.
Yeah, that's my next leadership challenge, is to figure out kind of how to find that person. And we're really at a phase now where we're reconnecting with our Afghan alumni because it was such a disruption for their lives and such a trauma for anybody. Imagine being, 18, you're living your life in your home city, and then suddenly you're living in Chile because some authoritarian regime took over your country.
Yeah, and you had to escape. I mean, we've talked in the past episodes about what that was like getting out of Kabul, right? The mad rush at the airport and all of that. And so, to your point, and the metaphorical having the rug pulled out from underneath you for those women, and all of a sudden Ecuador, Ireland, England, America, and having to manage that. But I would argue that if your vision of the future leader of Ascend grows out of those ranks or similar to those ranks, that terribly traumatic experience which forced them to upset their world become a power when they move forward, right? They will, as hard as that is, they will grow from that. And that's what we've all kind of seen, right? Over the years is we grow from those kinds of challenges. If you spend the time to put it in the proper perspective. You have to build an internal understanding of that role in your life, and then how that thing can be used as a force for good and how you alive. Because if you're not careful, you get obsessed about the bad things, right? We see that time and time again.
Yeah.
As we move into our respective days here, I do want to pull it back into adventure racing. I want to pull it back into the conversation around here. A large part in an adventure race, because it's such a kinetic environment, because there's so much going on and so many different factors, right? There's navigation, there's weather, there's terrain, there's fatigue, there's nutrition, all of that. We're forced to adapt along the way, right? And you make adaptations during the event, which then leads us to success in that event, right? And if you can't adapt an adventure race, it's over for you. If you can't deal with a blown tire, if you can't deal with a sick teammate, pack it up and call for the helicopter. What Ascend went through in 2021 and then what you're doing now is a massive example of adaptation. That the world that you thought you had and the world that you then got were two separate things. Can you talk to our listeners a bit about, in our closing time here together, about how you approach that adaptation as both an individual and as a leader? What did you do along the way to survive?
During the crisis, I think probably any adventure racer can identify, you focus on what you're doing and you put one foot in front of the other, and you don't question whether you're going to continue or not. And in our case, during that evacuation, the stakes were so high. And I was painfully aware of that. Like, if we didn't get these girls out onto a plane and literally, get them in the air, heading out of their country, then their future would be extremely different from the one that they wanted. And there was going to be one shot and no take backs. And the world was going to be very sympathetic for a very short period of time. And then it was going to slow down to what it is now. And I'm not very often right about things, but I was right about that. Like, the minute that the world stopped paying attention, the doors closed, and Afghans can go to Pakistan and hope and wait, and they're still stuck there hoping and waiting, and it's heartbreaking. And then the ones that are sitting in Qatar are getting sent to random countries they don't want to go to. Anyway, so we were right to lean in at the time. But all of our energy was expended for that. Again, a small organization, and we leaned on the goodwill and the generosity of so many people to rally around these girls. And they did. Like, for a small organization, again, we moved 134 people into new homes, and we didn't just put them there. We paid their rent and found them jobs and connected them with community resources. got them language lessons, whatever it was that would set them up to live a dignified life. We tried to do that. So by the end of, that was all from August to November, December 2021. By the end of 2022, we were exhausted, and we had like we had mental health challenges too. Honestly, when we look back now, those of us who were leading that were just like, whoa, we didn't look left or right at the time. But being suddenly in that position where you're like empowered to change someone's life with a small decision that you make, it's, and you didn't ask for that power. It's a twisted kind of thing. It's and of course, some people are deeply unhappy with the choices that we made, and they still carry those resentments to this day and let us know about it. Some people didn't do well when we wanted them to. There's just like, there was a lot. But the vast majority of stories are about girls who did shine. You know, they found their way through this hard time, and they're going to be fine. Anyway, we had to then sit down and say, what the hell are we going to do now when that was all done with, you know, depleted energy, some trauma of our own as leaders to think about, like, what have we just done? And was it right or not? What do we do now? We're a nonprofit, so we operate off of, you know, marketing our mission to people and them believing in us to give us funds. So you have to be strategic, and you have to be hopeful, and you have to be clear. And that's hard to do when you've just been through a thing like that. But it was clear at the end. It's like, well, we want to get back to the work. Nothing about our original mission changed. Nothing. And now, you know, 5 years on, it's even more clear than ever. You know, like, what the sport for development field is flourishing for a reason. There's this wider and wider recognition of, you know, sport is an essential part of being a human being, and we need it. And girls and women are humans as well. And the fact that we restrict sport to mostly men and boys is really dumb. We're just, you know, so we're in there. We're fighting in that space, trying to create opportunities that are culturally accessible for people wherever they live. I'm all fired up again about the challenges. I go through that journey, and my challenge is to bring others along with me, and, you know, bring the organization through that change with still having clarity of mission. And that is tough because we've, you know, again, we always work on the other side of the world. So bringing Ascend home and making it clear to people that, like, we've been through these changes, but we're still going after the same goal. That's challenging. And also keeping our energy up. Like, you and I have talked about this. It's tiring, like always marketing, always looking for resources that are always scarce. You know, it's a tiresome thing. And women and girls causes are consistently just dreadfully underfunded. 2% of all global philanthropy goes to women and girls, 2%. And I mean, it's just a staggering oversight.
What a disparity. Holy cap, right? When you look at the relative need that you have there, and the fact that it's such a small number, means that you have to push even harder for more recognition, but it's still, you feel like you're swimming upstream, something like that.
That's right. So I think the challenge is to your question, adapting where, you know, you've got to take stock of what you've learned, what you've done, but really being clear about where we're going now and why it's so urgent. Why it's so urgent that people should drop whatever they're doing and connect with it and be a part of it. That's what we're really trying to do right now. And to me, it is very clear, and talking to you always, it makes it more clear as well. Like, these shared values of choosing to do hard things, opening the door for other people to come along with you because you know it makes you all better. We got to do that and share that experience with those who don't have access to it otherwise.
Such powerful stuff, Marina. I know that you have Little League Baseball chirping at you in the background, so we're going to get you off into your day on this beautiful Saturday. Thanks for coming on the Dark Zone. For those who are listening, if you click in the show notes, you're going to find some links to Ascend and to Hike For what we have there. Like I said in the beginning, we are a proud sponsor of Ascend. We love the work that they do. We feel in the Dark Zone, we are dedicated to it as well. And one reason why we love Ascend, and I'll do my little commercial with you, Marina, before we say goodbye, is very often when you work with an organization, you feel like you're sending your capital and your time and your money into this huge black hole that then gets sucked up by all of these, you know, different things that are here. Ascend is a very small, flat grassroots organization. So I know that when I make a personal donation to Ascend, which I do, that money is going directly into helping people who need it right away, that it's not getting bit up along the way. And I think that everybody here who wants to play a role in helping sport and helping the world grow should take a look at those show notes and consider supporting Ascend. Marina, thanks for coming on the Dark Zone. Can't wait to race alongside you.
Me too. Thanks for having me. See you soon.
All right, folks, another episode of the Dark Zone, number 155, 155. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. We'll keep making it. You keep listening. We'll keep talking. You keep racing. That's the deal. If you like what you hear on the Dark Zone, please go over to your platform of choice and like and click and subscribe. The algorithm likes when you do that. Feel free to pass along to friends too. We are growing in listenership, and that is only due to you and your loyalty to the show. Final thanks to Marina for coming on. Love the work that she does with Ascend, and we are proud to support her. So take a look at that link in the show notes. Take a look at Hike for Her and all the great stuff we have going on. And once again, folks, as we always like to say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. All the best.